Pantheon Rise of the Fallen has had somewhat of an interesting launch since its inception onto Steam back in December 24. Releasing to a sizable crowd for a smaller MMO, the EverQuest-inspired online RPG seemed promising. The developers were active on all accounts of social media, not only promoting the game but also sharing the step-by-step process of how certain assets are being built into the game world. The main contributor to showcase all of this was none other than Chris Perkins, who was the creative director of Visionary Realms. Sharing a regular live stream on Twitch for all who were interested in the game, this enabled people to ask questions regarding upcoming changes or probe about potential content coming in the future. Things were going really well. Patches were flying out of the door on a regular basis, which saw reworking and adjustments to certain elements of the game. People were enjoying exploring a never-before-seen world and finding ways to navigate its brutal landscape difficulty. It honestly felt like a breath of fresh air. It wasn't quite EverQuest, but it certainly seems as close as we were going to get at that time. The Druid class got released alongside PvP servers, and then it just sort of seemed to fall off a cliff. People soon out-leveled any sense of meaningful content, and with the lack of quests, build variety, skills and locations to explore within the game, people started to become bored, simply wondering what was next. Now with boredom came distance, and people gradually moved on to other things. Monsters and memories is a phrase that is thrown about a lot in the classic crowd these days, and for good reason. As much as it is a very different project to Pantheon, it appears to be a lot more robust and reliable in its development. After all, let's not forget, it was the lack of direction within Pantheon that I fear has led us to where we are now with the game, which is sat under 1,000 players on Steam, just after 8 months of launch, and that's at the recording of this video. I know Steam numbers, they're not gospel, but it's a pretty good indication of where we are. However, I want this video to be viewed in the light that we are actually giving the developers the benefit of the doubt. I'm a firm believer in second chances, or in some cases, the 10th chance, or whatever we're at. And I do truly feel that through all of the negativity surrounding Pantheon, which, you know, some's deserved, some's not, they have always remained headstrong. That the content that we are seeking and desiring is coming. Whilst a lot of players are fretting about the sheer lack of players and, you know, lack of content, the developers seem to have buried their heads into the project, doubled down, and, you know, come to terms with the fact that things are happening. They are absolutely adamant that 1.0 will happen. In fairness to them, and I try and give credit where credit is due, the Ash Breathers Enclave, which was introduced last month, is a great example and indicator that they're still working towards fleshing out the world, albeit it may be a little later than we wanted. Now, to further the statement of progress within the project and to confirm that the player base is being heard, the lead developer shared a statement at the beginning of this month that was posted to Steam. So today I want to check that out with you guys. What you see before you is a commitment to what they call Tenants. Now, this is like a core philosophy that Pantheon was designed upon and built upon as a foundation. This is kind of a structure that they have followed from the moment that they essentially released the game, or at least the idea of the game, all the way through up until now. Now, of course, there are going to be some mixed opinions about this. Some people will say straight away, it's too little, it's too late, I'm not even going to hear them out. And trust me, I'm looking directly at you right now. I understand. And please don't shoot the messenger here. I am just trying to be the voice of reason. I have shared my criticisms with this game so many times that I'm kind of blue in the face about it. And of course, it's hard to avoid criticism in any sense of social media or content creation when you're so passionate about a project. And, you know, ultimately, none of us are negative for no reason, okay? And negativity sometimes comes across the wrong way, where we have this real passion, but it bleeds into a negative source because we have no other way to project it. And hopefully, in the videos like this, hopefully this is a way for the developers to be heard, and of course, the community. So either way, this is a statement about where Pantheon is, what they're doing, and I guess the rules that they abide by. So this is a statement from Chris Perkins, and this states that if you followed Pantheon for any length of time, you've probably heard our core tenets. These are the guiding principles that shape every piece of the game that we're building. However, we see them debated far too often within the community, and, you know, side note, I can understand why. I think if anyone stepped foot within Pantheon for any length of time over the last few months, you will understand why, but let's again try and be positive here. We are taking this opportunity to revisit our tenets, to consolidate them and clarify them, and also to explain a bit of why these tenets exist. not just as lofty ideals, but as grounded design positions we are committing to in very real and practical ways. So if I'm being completely honest, straight off the bat, this reads to me like the team have sat down, they've addressed a lot of the social media, the Discord that's been on fire for many months, the dropping numbers, the dropping player base, and this is a statement to say, look, we really need to at least address that we're hearing these people, at least reinforce the ideology that we're still here. We're still the team that presented you the game that you enjoyed for the first few months, that presented you, the idea all of those years back. Admittedly, God rest Brad and some of the other team that have now left. But the core concept of the team and the idea is very much still there, even though it may have changed hands over the years. As much as I do feel like there is gravity in what they're saying, I do feel like, content, they are still working on it, of course, but I do feel that this statement, first and foremost, is very much a please just be quiet, let us do our thing, let us prove you wrong, and then if all else fails, then absolutely go to town, but just kind of give us some leadway first and foremost. So as we get further down, they have broken down an itinerary of each one of these tenants, then they've given their own explanation as to why these are important. So what we're going to do is go through this list of tenants. I'm going to give you my honest opinions as a player of Pantheon, someone that's hopeful about the project, but of course has been critical in the past. And then I will leave a link to their responses, their original statement, because you guys don't need me to sit here and read this out to you. I feel like what I'm about to give you from my perspective is far more tangible and relevant to me than it would be to read a regular post. So they state, here is the list of newly consolidated tenants. They state that number 1, content is king. I feel like right now, no drum is being beaten any louder than the content drum in Pantheon. For the longest time, at least as far back as I can remember, people have been crying out about the lack of content, whether that is meaningful content to progress through in the terms of dungeons, instance areas, world bosses, that sort of thing, or whether it's just towns, available resources, quests, for example, the perception system. There are so many things in this game that there is sprinkles of. There's kind of like an introductory amount of content. Okay, there is like 10%, like Diet Coke content, if you like, and people just want more. So content, I don't really feel like this should even be addressed. I feel like this should be a given, but, given the benefit of the doubt, content is most definitely king. Number 2, they say class identity matters. And you know what? I want to give Pantheon a bit of a tip of the cap here a little bit. I'm not being paid to say this at all. This is not a sponsorship or anything like that. But I do truly feel that for the time that I've spent in Pantheon, one thing that is abundantly clear is the fact that each class does feel very, very different between all of them. For whether someone's playing a warrior, a dire lord, a summoner, necromancer, all of those classes really, especially in group content, kind of fail to exist on their own. I love the synergy. I love the fact that in parties, you can't just go in and obliterate everything on your own. You need someone to CC, you need someone to heal, you need someone to tank, and those roles feel way more important in Pantheon than they do, something like Retail WoW or something, which of course, still has its place, but in this it definitely feels like everyone's got a dedicated role with dedicated skills that you have to think a little bit more about when you're using them. You have to think about your synergies, who are you inviting to the party? If you've got a ranger already, do you really need another one? Should you not have a summoner or an enchanter or a necromancer? It kind of opens up the window of opportunity for not just class fantasy, but also team synergy. So yes, I do agree that class identity matters. There are too many games in the landscape right now that don't have that. There are so many games. I mean, again, I don't want to touch on the likes of Final Fantasy XIV or Retail WoW too much. We've already covered that. But there are a lot of games now where each class, no matter what you play, can heal. Each class can AoE. Each class can single target DPS. And in this game, that's not the case. You've got dedicated classes that do dedicated things. And I feel like that's really important to remain the same. Number 3, they state they want a challenging social game. Now, I assume by this they want something that's akin to the likes of classic World of Warcraft. I'm really sorry about the references here, guys, but we can only reference what we've got out in the market currently. But yes, I feel like classic World of Warcraft, EverQuest, all of those older, like Ultima Online, those older, more traditional, grounded MMOs where people genuinely have to chat to each other to form a group, to overcome content that they otherwise would not be able to. And to be honest with you, this is probably my preferred way to play an MMO. Whilst I do enjoy being able to hop on games like Elder Scrolls Online, where everything is just you're ported into a dungeon, it's easy, you can get in, get your stuff and get out. It does really lack that social element of the game. So I really do feel like to focus on that would be really, really important. And when you do overcome these challenges from a boss or a mob that's been absolutely wrecking you, destroying your party over and over again, the elation that you get from that is unmatched. And I feel like that bleeds into number 4 as well, which is risk should be rewarded. In a lot of modern MMOs, there is no real risk to go out of your way or any real reason to go out of your way to explore off the beaten path and try something that's slightly more challenging. In a game like Pantheon, one thing I really, really enjoyed when I spent a lot of my time playing it was the fact that I could go off and explore, but perhaps to my own detriment. Am I going to wander into an area with chevron mobs, which are designed for groups, or am I going to wander off to a higher con area where I'm just going to get wrecked, lose my corpse and all of my stuff? Now, to some people that might sound quite brutal, but to me it was something that I really, really enjoyed. The kind of feeling of feeling mortal, being really aware of your own weaknesses and the fact that everything in the world can kill you quite easily was something that really drew me to this game. Number 5, they state player progression should be meaningful and multifaceted. Player progression was a bit of a sore spot for a lot of people very early on in Pantheon. A lot of the kits for a lot of classes weren't fully fleshed out. Some of them had skills that were only taking you up to level 20. And then thereafter that, a lot of the skills were just so expensive to buy that people just really couldn't be bothered or just physically couldn't farm for long enough to get the money together. And I feel like right now, we have quite a linear progression system within the classes of the game. Now, of course, they might not just be touching on the classes, but I guess that's kind of what hits home to me. You could also breathe this into the crafting. Crafting for me, I'm not a massive crafter anyway, but the crafting that I did do in the game was fairly lackluster. I really didn't enjoy it, but I can imagine there is a lot of fleshing out that needs to be done there. And the multifaceted tones of it, I feel like what they mean by that is the fact that in an economy like Pantheon, in a world that relies on a lot of its players, that doesn't just have a driven economy from the game developers, I feel like the multifaceted tones will need to come from the fact that the player base will have to provide certain things to others where others can't. For example, if you've got a jewel crafter and you've got a blacksmith, there might be things that they need from each other. You've got a tailor, a skinner, all of these different things that later on in the game, people could rely upon each other for. On to number 6, they want a living and breathing world. Well, I feel like this is a given in any MMO, and I hate to say it, but a living and breathing world doesn't exist if you don't have people playing it. You can put as many NPCs in, you can put as many perception flags in as you want, but realistically, if people aren't wandering about in an MMO, it will never feel living and breathing, and that's me trying to be as positive as possible. I really don't want this to come across the wrong way, but really, if you implement number 1 all the way through to 5 so far correctly, then number 6 should just take care of itself. Number 7, they say economy and rarity truly matters. They want that to matter, and I feel like, again, that's absolutely a given, to be honest, and it's kind of a miss in a lot of games. I've spent some time playing Destiny 2 recently, and even games like ESO, for example, that just seem to, chuck higher leveled or exotic or legendary weapons at you sort of fairly early on. ESO isn't too bad with this, but Destiny 2, when I logged into that was very much like, boom, here's an exotic, here's this, and it didn't really feel like I've earned it. In Pantheon, for the time that I spent playing the game, which is over 100 hours, it's not the most in the world, but it's enough. I genuinely felt like every single thing that I did, every gear upgrade that I got, felt great. It did remind me of classic WoW. It did remind me of going from the white item to the green item, so on and so forth, and it felt really meaningful. There just wasn't enough of it. I can't really comment on the economy too much. I didn't really do too much buying and selling, but ultimately, if the economy has fallen to shit like it did in New World all of those years ago, then of course that is going to be a detriment to the game. Number 8, they state that they want to forge bonds that matter. Now, I kind of interpret this a little bit differently. I feel like this has got nothing to do with the game or player versus player, those sort of interactions. I feel like this is more between the developers and us. I feel like if they complete 1 through 7, they want to be able to forge bonds of trust. They want to regain that trust that they had so early on, and they want to turn around to us and say, hey, stick with us. We are working on it. The game, it is going through active development. It's not easy. It is a bit of a slog. It is hard, but stick with us. We're going to bring the content out and you guys are going to be really surprised. And then when they do, they want to reap the rewards of that. They want to be, the success story, the underdog, the rise, like the Final Fantasy 14, the 1.0 into a realm reborn. They want that sort of story. And, I'm hopeful, don't get me wrong. I mean, the position we're in now is not great, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there is a chance that they might be able to do it. So there's a lot to digest there, really a lot to take in. And as I said at the start, you know, I'm going to just go through kind of what I feel about those certain points, and you guys can make your own mind up, and then you can read all of this if you want to via the link in the description. This pretty much just goes into what Joppa and the team's thoughts are on each individual topic. There's just a lot here for me to read out. I don't want to bore you guys to death, but listen, I want to be the optimist here. I've been the pessimist for Pantheon for a long time, and I do want to bring some optimism to the project because deep down, I do still really enjoy the game. I logged into it just yesterday, and I was running around, and the first thing I thought was, this is just such a shame. There is so much potential here, and I really want them to have, you know, the underdog story. I want them to, you know, turn things around, do the No Man's Sky stuff and bring it back. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? You know, do you believe they can do it? Do you believe they can't? Has the ship sailed? I'd be quite keen to know down below. As always, if you enjoy this sort of content, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.